Hello there, I'm another Magento dev. It occurred to me I haven't done a install Magento 2 video for a bit, so I think it was 243 the last one I did, so I'm going to do a 245p1 install right now. Okay, so let's see if we can keep this nice and sort of short, right? Let's talk about what we sort of need. What tools do we need at hand, right? First of all, we need the Experience League. It's called now. I don't know what that's about. Experience League, by Adobe. We just need the docs up for some of these sort of composer commands, just so obviously you can read through these if you want, but in true Adobe fashion, there's too much here. There's too much. You don't need all this. If you want to watch someone do it, we'll just do it and monkey see, monkey do. That's what we'll do, right? We'll take that approach. That's the way I work. I'd rather just see someone run through it and picking out the important stuff, and that's what we're going to do now. So you need MySQL. You need some way of accessing MySQL. I've got a couple of ways. I can go to, I've got like a version of Adminer installed locally, which I can log into, and I can log into my databases that way, which I might do in a second just to show you around. But you can get MySQL up on command line on an Ubuntu machine. So I'm using an Ubuntu machine, but this also works on Mac. You also want something like Valet installed for a local host. I've got Valet Linux Plus installed. I'll put the links in the description to all these different tools. If obviously you can click through if you don't have them, and download those. Also MAMP Pro, MAMP to an extent, but MAMP Pro on a Mac is also a brilliant tool for working with different PHP versions and Magento and stuff. So whilst we're in MySQL here, I'm just going to create a database first of all, because we're going to need one, and I'm going to do 245p1. I'm going to call the database m245p1 and get that created, because I'll need to connect to that in a second. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you, or I'm just going to check my PHP version. So it will install on a minimum of 7.4 at the moment. 245p1 will install on 7.4. However, we're going to, just for the sake of it, install it on 8.1, because it also works on 8.1. And with Valet, I need to use the Valet use command for 8.1 and then update CLI so it all stays there for me to be able to use it. So as you can see there, Valet is now updating, and now I've got 8.1 installed. If you're installing PHP 8 for the first time, you're going to need to make sure that you have got the packages that Magento requires, so the PHP extensions that Magento requires, like curl, so a few things like that. So you've got to make sure that those are installed as well. If you don't have them installed, to be honest, the Magento install procedure through Composer will let you know which ones you're missing. So obviously it's difficult for me to tell you exactly which ones you're going to have and which ones you aren't, but I would say just basically go in a search engine and just see what Magento requires and then come back. Also, I'm using Composer version 243, so to be honest, installing this version 245, you want 2 or above, go for the latest one. And if you want the latest one, you can do Composer self update, and that'll basically update your Composer for you. And I can't see you going far wrong with those. So we're looking at PHP 8.1, 7.4 minimum. We're looking at Composer 243. MySQL, I'm using MySQL 8, so yeah, you want the latest version of MySQL, to be honest, particularly if you're trying to mimic what you're going to be doing on a server, because I don't think any lesser version of MySQL 8 is compatible with Ubuntu 20, and the majority of your servers should be now Ubuntu 20. If you're trying to replicate like a server environment locally, you want to try and keep things as similar as possible. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into my sites directory where I'm going to install it, because my sites directory is where Valet is linked to. and it's known as the root of my sort of local website or web server. Okay, so let's have a look at the Magento command that you require. So you need to be looking at get the meta package for the community version. So it's basically, I mean, this is a good one here. So we'll take this. Did I say community? That's enterprise. Where's community gone? Was it only that one up there? No. Right, community edition. So I'll just copy this and I will paste that there. But now I'm going to change the version to 2. Equals 2.4.5-P1, and then I'm going to specify the directory that it needs to be created into. So M245, I'm going to call it M245 P1, and then basically my domain that I'll be able to access it on with Valet will be M245P1.test. So I'm going to install that into there. So it's now going to go away into Magento land and grab all the files that are required. At this point, you might, if you haven't already got them sort of saved on your system, need to enter your keys for your Magento repo, which you can get from your Magento account. And I'm sure you know where that is. So you jump in and get those before you start this, because it will ask you for them, but I think mine must be saved on my system. And then what happens is once you say to save them, they'll save into your auth JSON as well, so you have the choice whether to save them or not in there. Okay, so that's now installed Magento. So if I cd into M245P1, let's have a look. So there's Magento, right? It's gone and got all the files. So at this point, I'm just going to jump into my code editor just to show you around. Now, what can we notice in here, right? So we've got no env file yet because that process hasn't been created. We haven't actually installed Magento anywhere yet. We've just dragged the files down. We've got no code folder in here as well for your modules. You might notice, you might have seen that before on other Magento installs, and also vendor is all sort of full up, because that's exactly what Composer went and did. It brought in the core files and then it filled up vendor, which is Magento's core essentially. Public will have an empty static. This is your front end of your site. Pub is your front end, so your web server does need to be configured to point to pub and not the root of your site. And yeah, that's pretty much everything there. Generated is another sort of static folder, if you like, which is created from a compilation of all your modules and dependencies, or the dependencies in your modules, and that's about all you need to know really at this point. So now we're going to run the install command, and we'll do it in here. So if we go back to the docs, there's an example of the install command. The install command is basically this here. So if we, and there's a few extra bits to it now. I think the last one I did, I don't know if even, or one of the ones I've done in my time on YouTube videos didn't have the Elasticsearch settings. So it's good to update these now and again. But this is for the latest version of Magento as of October 2022. I'll keep these updated because I know they are useful for people. Right, so essentially you want to keep all the Elasticsearch stuff pretty much as it is. Do you know what I'm going to do? Here's a top tip. I'm just going to jump into command line here while they're pasted in there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start Elasticsearch, and I have a command on my localhost. Actually, I'm going to show you this. So I won't say before you start, but if you're working with Magento, or you're planning on working with Magento, multiple Magentos, then you might want to actually, I'm just going to grab this off screen. Then you might want to actually set up some shortcuts in your bash script, or I use ZSHRC file, and down at the bottom here I've got a load of sort of shortcuts, and one of them is to restart Elasticsearch, which happens a lot. So essentially, when I type in Elastic here, it restarts Elasticsearch for me, and that way I'm able to sort of run on a clean, I just make sure it's started, because if I haven't been working on a Magento today, or I've just restarted my machine, Elasticsearch might not be started. And well, that's important when you're installing Magento, because it wants Elasticsearch to be up and running. If I tried running the install from without Elasticsearch running like it is now, it would basically give me an error and I'd have to run it again, so it'd be a pain in the ass. So I'm just going to change a couple of these to show you that it can be done. So I'm going to change the language files and the currency to Britain, to British pounds, and the language to English, British English. And I'm going to keep all these things the same, but you might want to pick a more secure username and password. Obviously locally this really don't matter, and you might want to personalize it as well, putting in your first name, last name. Now, for anyone working locally, I think even on sort of MAMP or Macs, the default, and particularly if you've installed MySQL on your Ubuntu machine, if you're running Linux, the password and username for your database is normally root and root. And the default, if you're copying and pasting off the docs, just be aware of that, that it comes through as Magento. And so I changed them. The database name, I've just created it. I can't remember what I called it. But it is a good chance to show you admin. So if I go into, I'll just do this off screen because I've got other databases in there, but then I'll show you the one that I've created. Just get rid of this sec. Right, so if I just, so I'm basically logging in with root and root, just like I did. There you go, I'll show you that. So just logging in with root and root. And then I added, that's the one, I added this database here, didn't I? I did this database, which is empty in a minute. So I need to specify that database name in here. Right, space after that. Localhost is fine because I'm running this from my localhost. Some machines you might want to specify the host as like 127.0.0.1 sometimes, which is like another version of saying localhost, I assume. And this is the domain that it's going to show on. So I mentioned with Valet I have a decent naming convention where it uses the what was it, M245, the name of your folder, M245P1, and then .test. So I strongly recommend Valet. It's really good. And then I can run this install basically. So enter, and it essentially builds my Magento store. And so it's just running through the schema check. So it'll be filling this. I won't refresh it right now, but it'll be filling that up. We'll check it again in a minute. What else have we got here? Just close that. And I'll just close that in for now. So in a second we're going to go to basically the front end of the site once it's done all this. So as I say, this is going to be on 8.1, PHP 8.1, because this version of Magento is compatible on PHP 8.1. So actually the other thing that I'll do is I'll install, little bonus, I'll install the sample data as well. Oh, we've had an error here. Right, it's complaining about Elasticsearch. See, right, I think it's because I did it in the other window and it might not have known it was running. So all I did there, just a little tip for beginners of working on command line, is if I press the up key on my directional keys, it brings back the last thing I typed. So if I keep pressing up, look, it goes through all the things that I've just typed. So that's quite a simple and easy way of getting back to where you was, and not having to retype things. So if I just try this again, I I have made a mistake, but it's a good job. It's a good job. Right, my host here, I didn't set as localhost. That's how it'll be set. That's what I'll need for it to work locally. So no wonder it didn't find it running. It was running, but it wasn't running on. It wasn't looking for it running on localhost. It was looking at port 9200 on that other host that was like the dummy host that was said esHostExample.com. So look out for that one as well. All useful information. So essentially, it's installing all the database schema again, and it should only reinstall what it needs. It should pick up from where it left off. So I won't worry too much if you do have an error when you're running the install, because you can always run it again, basically over the last one, and the install process is kind of clever enough to pick up where it's left off. So this is basically running sort of a version of setup upgrade now, which is a command within Magento's deployment. So that's done basically. So now it's giving us our admin URL. So it generates this. So I would say make a note of this, but you don't really have to. Just to show you, the env file should have been env.php has been created now, and it actually mentions your backend front name in there. So that's, if you lose this, that's where you go to find it. It's in your env.php. Obviously, here's all my database information just for locally, for local, and also the mage mode by default comes through as default. And if you're going to be working on this, you want to reset that to developer. So Magento has 3 modes as default, which it comes with, which I've never used, to be honest. I don't know what the benefits of default are. Developer, which self-explanatory. This gives you all like your front-end error reporting and what have you. And it's a slightly less compiled version other than production, which is obviously once your site's going into production, you want it to be in production mode on a live server and what have you. So I'm just going to save that as developer mode there. And I am going to jump into my site. Now, I just want to check actually, for this is obviously for Valet users, I want to make sure that, so if I just do it here, if I just jump out of this folder, that I've got a sort of a secure certificate, or Valet treats the site as being secure, because I used HTTPS in the install URL. So in order to do that, I'll type Valet secure, and then it was M245P1, so it'll secure that folder and restart everything. There you go. And now if I go to M245P1 as my web address, M245P1.test, and I say it's okay, we should get once it loads. There we go, it just took a second. So you can see it's loading Magento. So we're up and running. So I just want to go to the back end, check that's all okay and resolving, which it is. There we go. So that's Magento, and I can test the details that I put in, which was admin, and it was admin 123 by default. Make sure I can log into it. Right. So this might catch the odd person out. It always catches me out. It's annoying. If you don't want two-factor auth set up locally, then this is how you switch it off. So basically, you can do it this way. Actually, it's probably the easiest way to do it for beginners. If you just do a search for 2FA or factor, where is it? There we go. Two-factor auth. Essentially, locally, you can switch this off. So set that to 0, and this brings me nicely onto the next sort of thing that I'm going to tell you for sort of starting off now working on your Magento, which is if I just go into my ZHS, I've got what I call the big 4 commands, and the big 4 commands are setup upgrade, di compile, PHP, and then setup static content deploy, and then I pick these 2 languages, but you can use whatever languages you require. And I've got the -F flag there because I often run this in developer mode, and don't even know if actually, I'm sure you still need the force flag for deploying static content by the command line in developer mode, and then a cache flush. So I've got this set up as an alias, so if I type big 4 and run it, or B4, then it'll basically run these commands for me. So it's just a shorthand way of pasting all of that into my command line. So what this is going to do is it is going to basically rebuild my store. And why do I need to rebuild my store? Well, I've just made a change to the config. So I've made a change to say I don't want this. So I really need Magento to just sort of build itself out again and come back around, and then I should be able to so we don't need this anymore. So basically, yeah, that's how I would and I've also got a shortcut, an overall shortcut to like bin Magento, which is handy. So I do B/M and then I do like index refresh or whatever, or if I just want to flush the cache, I'd do B/M space cache : flush. So it just speeds things up. So I've got all that in my ZSHRC just for convenience. Right then. So basically now it'll be switching off, officially switching off the extension that I told it to, which was the two-factor auth in config. Obviously, you can, what I've just done there, you can do this for any of these extensions here, but obviously don't just do it willy-nilly. You've got to have a reason for doing it. But if you want to sort of play with extensions and switch them on and off, once you start creating your own as well, they'll appear in here. And yeah, this is like a file which contains all of the on-off switches for your extensions. So those two files, env and config, are quite important. So now, I mentioned before that the pub folder and the static folder was empty. Now I've basically got all my front end files in there. So this is what this is doing now. This deploy using quick strategy here is basically building out all the static files for display on the front end. So it's basically how you see, well, that for example, but that's the back end version. How we sort of see this, it's all static files, which is one of the reasons why it's so quick. Right then, so also whilst I'm in developer mode, the reason I had the force flag on my deployment is because if you make any changes, so essentially if I hadn't ran, if I clear this folder and I run and I just refresh my front end, because it's in developer mode, it will rebuild static content for me. It's just, obviously it makes my machine fan go mental because it's doing a lot of work in the browser, and the browsers are quite labour intensive to your computer, so it's often worthwhile just running it on command line and building it all out. But just to let you know, if you are making small changes and not sort of getting rid of everything, if you refresh the browser, those changes will come through. There we go, it's logged me straight in. Lovely. It'll always ask you this: Adobe wants your data. Nope, no thanks Adobe. Right, so I'm logged in. There's obviously no cron job running, and the indexes are invalid. So we can do something about one of those. And as I mentioned before, I've got my B/M indexer. The index, and that'll reindex my database. There's nothing much in it yet, which leads me nicely onto this is something that you may get locally with Elasticsearch, particularly if you're running a number of Magento sites. Is you basically, it fills up. You get too many requests going through, and one of the ways to deal with that is there's a great blog or a great sort of like link that I go to, which is, I'll put it in the description, magecomp.com. And it solves this with a couple of commands. So if we just jump down to here, copy this here, paste that there, and then also the next one, copy that, paste that there, then run the indexer. It should complete. So let's install some. What was I going to say? The demo data. So this is really good. The demo data. I'm just gonna sort of set it for it. See if we can get how to install sample data. Beautiful. And it's moved, so we'll just go to this one. So this should give you the command, what used to. There we go. Run, so Magento sample data deploy in the root of the application. modify applications root, enable sample data. Yeah, so what it's sort of saying there, it's weird the way they've done that. Normally it's like a little one-liner you can copy, but what we'll do is we'll just run it here. So we'll say, I think it's actually, so it'll be bin Magento, so I've got my shortcut here, sample data, and then it was deploy, I think, bin Magento, sample data deploy to modify the application's root. Yeah, so then this goes into the interacts with your composer, I believe. Right, so this is where I need my auth, which I have just off screen. So if I just grab this, please bear with me and talk amongst yourselves. Come on. There we go. Nightmare. Sorry about that. And so this is your keys from your Magento. So your Magento repository access basically is what it's asking for here. And once I've put in my private key, because it only shows one of them, I'm not too bothered. Don't know what you're going to be able to do with it. And then basically you can say, look, if I just cover that up. Right, once you've entered them, you can just see at the bottom there, it says, do you want to store them in your auth JSON? And yes, I do. And basically I won't go into it, but your auth JSON gets created. Is found in the root of your site. So it's downloading sample data now, look. It's going away and getting everything. So this is actually really good from Magento. It hasn't saved the auth JSON. I don't know why. You would find an auth, you can see the sample file there, but you would find an auth.json file in there with your keys in it. And then you can obviously, you can just go and create one manually. They're quite easy to create from the sample. You just put, basically, see what I've entered in. You'd have your public key and your private key in there, and then take the sample off the end. Yeah, so this is pretty good from Magento, basically. They give you a whole load of sample data, like wishlist data, sales, customers, products. Obviously, it's really good. So if I just run another index refresh, it'll rebuild my catalog. Also, if you're working on Magento, I've said this many times on the channel, but you might want to reconfigure the cache settings. So the ones I switch off, because Magento's cache is quite good, if you like, are these three. If I'm working on my Magento, I would switch off full page cache, layout, and block HTML. And that way, obviously it's slightly slower on the front end, but you're going to get your changes through more frequently. Now, come on, sample data, where are you? What have I not done? Right, so now I have rebuilt I might just need to rebuild my store again. Yeah, right, so I've installed sample data. So I'm going to run the big four again. Going to run the big four again and see if my sample data comes through. Just check I haven't missed anything off this. We're not bereft, you know, slightly bereft of instruction here, aren't we? But yeah, never had a problem with this before. So again, yeah, so it's running setup upgrade, di compile. See, it's compiling all the. You can see the sample data module, one of them's there anyway, the catalog sample data module is there, so it's paused on this, so it's clearly writing schema to the database and writing data to the database, no doubt, because obviously it will need to live there to be able to be visible on the front end, and I think that was the step that we missed out. So yeah, the big four is what you need in this situation. Obviously, you don't need sample data every time. If you know what you're doing, you might want to. You could actually start, you know, just start working on the store without the sample data. It makes it sort of easier for a beginner to kind of go in and work out maybe what different parts of Magento are doing, what different jobs. Basically, it helps to illustrate that fact. I would always advise a developer have a demo store just running parallel to any other store that they're building. Because yeah, they're useful for testing. I've got a few of them. They're useful for testing, and just obviously if things go wrong on a production store, you've always got your demo store to check things on. So it is good practice. So it's taken a while to install all this, but I will keep it running. And hopefully it won't be too much longer. Yeah, it looks like it's just doing review sample data now. And then catalog rule sample data. Get in there. Swatches sample data, which is a good one to see how it works. Nearly there. And we are done. So now it's gonna, well, it's done with that part of it. Now it's gonna compile. So di compile, I haven't covered that yet. Essentially creates this folder, which is your dependencies. So as this is running, you'll see this grow. There you go. So that actually affects this folder here. And then the next one, as I mentioned, is static content deploy. So we'll just recap on that. It basically builds out that folder. I'm still going through. Nearly there. So what I'm going to do is, once it starts on static content, I'm going to give it a boost. So just by refreshing it, there we go, we're up and running. So we've got categories, we have got landing pages, we have got products and images. They're just loading in for the first time. And yeah, that is from start to finish installing Magento 2.4.5 P1 October 2022 edition. I hope that's been useful. If you like these types of videos, please subscribe to the channel and give it a like. And I will see you in the next one.